Alright, with work on Therian's Wrath, the saber done, it's now time to start working on the armor I'll be wearing with it at this year's Salt Lake Comic-Con. Or as I'm going to be calling it, the Armor Mark II. This version, unlike the previous version, will not be built from PVA foam. Rather, it'll be built from a combination of 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch Sintra. Now, as you can see here, this is the old chest piece, which I've decided was too wide originally. So, as I've laid this out in silver Sharpie, I've gone narrower. I'm still laying out the lines for the initial cuts on this piece. I've picked up some good gloves to go for the armor as well. Now here I've got new measurements for pieces on the backs of the hands, which I may or may not use. Pieces over the feet. These, unlike the old ones, are actually going to be designed to wrap over the foot instead of just laying on top. Now, the leg piece and arm piece, these are actually circumference numbers. That's roughly a little larger than the circumference around my wrist, and that would be the same for for the beefier part of my forearm. Now, the forearm pieces are going to be based off the armor that Therian Jin is wearing in the game, Star Wars: The Old Republic. As you can see, it's got the raised detail here across the top as well as underneath. All in all, should be a bit more of a challenge than the last time, but alright, at this point, you can see lots of lines from the silver Sharpie. I've used a combination of the old template, well, the end of the old template, the old armor piece to get the lines laid out where I want them. These long horizontal lines are actually going to wind up details. I also used the old cutout for the neck to create the layout for the new cutout for the neck. Now, you'll notice the angles here. Unlike the original, I'm going to open this whole section up and probably not do a piece in the middle here to make it look a little different. See how it goes. Alright, as you can see, I've got the piece cut out of the sheet. Gone in with a grinding bit and my Dremel and cut in the grooves. Now I admit I freehanded the grooves, but all in all they're still fairly uniform once I sanded them, so I'm kind of happy there. Cut open the opening for my neck and collar piece. At this point, see these little dashed lines here, and I think the other one used to be about here, but it's disappeared. That's about where I needed to fold it over for the heat treatment. Moving right along. Alright, continuing work with the 1/4 inch Sintra. I've laid out the main part of both leg pieces as well as both arm pieces. Get these cut out as well. Need to get them heat formed. But as you can see from here, I originally did the conical section wrong. I actually got it backwards. I'm glad I caught it. Once I get these cut, then I'll move on to shaping these and then starting with the 1/8 inch stuff. Alright, went in and got the 2 leg pieces cut, as well as the 2 main arm pieces. Freely admit, after going through and doing the chest piece with a box cutter, I decided to cheat when it came to cutting these. That 1/4 inch Sintra, it's a 1/4 inch thick and it's nice and hard. So I went and got myself a brandy new jigsaw. Didn't buy a really expensive one, but that made cutting these take all of about 10 minutes. Alright, working with Sintra is a lot more time intensive than working with EVA foam when it comes to heating and forming, but it's a lot more firm, it's a lot denser, so the results look more like what I'm shooting for here, which is, in this case, is armor. Got the chest piece curved over. I do have one fracture going through here, but I think I actually started that the first time I put this on to make sure it would fit around my neck and head. Both forearm bracers are basically formed now, as are the leg pieces. Now the leg pieces, because of their size, will actually flex around my leg, so I've just got to work out the detail and how I want to work the fastenings. In the case of the arms, they do fit, but they are really tight, especially when you try to stick your hand with the thumb through that end. So I am probably going to have to work out a relief cut or take out a little bit on each side and fill it with a backing plate so that I can get my hand to fit through this narrow space here. But as far as looks go, I am very happy with where I am so far. Alright, based off the screenshot from Tor that I'm using as a guide, I drew up a pattern for the arm piece, cut it out of the cardstock, actually construction paper, but either way, cut it out of the cardstock, then traced it down onto the 1/8 inch Sintra. Got both arms laid out. Now it's just time to get to cutting it. Alright, in a departure from the previous version of this armor, instead of keeping it the main piece squared like this, I've gone in, I'm putting an extra plate across the top, but to match the line there, I've gone in using a razor saw and a sanding wheel of my Dremel and trimmed off the corners. Of course, I still haven't done this one yet to give you an idea how it looked previously, but I'm trimming off the corners to give it a little more, well, a little less square look. Alright, been doing a little more work on the main part of the bracers, namely opening up the gap here so I can actually get my thumb through the hole here. Now, I'm actually going to make a clasp, if you will, that'll cover this in thinner craft foam, probably 2mm, that'll anchor to a Velcro strap here and probably be hot glued on the one side. But as you can see, if I can make it focus on my arm and not the stuff on the surface, it is going to work out. There is a noticeable gap there, but that's also to allow for the thickness of my sleeve. We're getting there. Okay, back at work on the armor. As you can see, I've got my shoulder extensions done now. I went in with the grinding bit in my Dremel and added some more panel lines. And then I took my heat gun and formed both of these pieces to fit over the shoulders of the main piece. That gives you a rough idea how it'll look. Of course, I've got to glue those pieces down, get the Chicago bolts going, but it's progress. Alright, as you can see, I've gone in and heat formed the detail pieces that are going to go over the top of the bracers. What you can make out here between the pieces is a center line I drew to line it all up. Same thing over here on the right hand side, or sorry, the left hand side. This is the left bracer, that's the right one. I've got them marked inside because each is formed just a little differently, but this is going to come along quite nicely now. Initial plan is I'll glue them down and then use Chicago screws for detail in the pieces and to help hold them on beyond just the glue. Alright, more progress. At this point I've taken some E6000 and glued down the detail plates on the top of both bracer pieces. Got the front ends clamped down with spring clamps. These pieces of plastic are actually acting as spacers to keep the detail pieces from sliding into each other. One of the hazards of working on sloped pieces. Similar setup here, only instead of another elastic, I'm using two more little spring clamps. Now, this is where patience is going to have to come in because this stuff takes about 24 hours to cure. Now, over here, got a similar setup going with the first of our shoulder plate additions. Now, in this case, I'm only working one side at a time because I only have so many clamps. Now, in this case, since I do plan to go in and secure it down with Chicago screws as well, I've only actually got glue running along a band about 1 inch to 1.5 inches across going over the shoulder piece. We'll see how this all works.